Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another episode of In the Frame. Today I'm going to talk about Moviedrome on BBC Two. This was a show that heavily inspired my film watching, my film taste. It ran from 1988 to 1994 and then 1997 to the year 2000. And if you're in the UK and of a similar age to me, perhaps you caught Moviedrome as well. Again, these are the days of the BBC actually being good, and also British TV only having 4 channels. Channel 5 was only a glint in some madman's eye. From 1988 to 1994, it was introduced by Alex Cox. I've still got some Alex Cox films to watch, but whenever I think of Alex Cox, I think of Moviedrome. I get quite emotional when I see Alex Cox because it takes me back to Moviedrome and so many of my favourite films. That was the first time I'd seen them, or it was a validation of how awesome they were because Alex Cox was introducing them. I'm going to go through season 1 and season 2 of the films because I thought instead of mentioning Moviedrome all the time, I would actually do videos of how many of those films I have in my collection and are favourites of mine, how many I've seen but aren't in the collection, and how many I haven't actually seen. I didn't watch every single film that was on Moviedrome because I think it's about 200 or something like that. So 92 to 94, I was at university at the time, so there's chunks of those seasons that I never saw. So it will just be interesting to go through. So I'm going to go through season 1 and season 2, 1988 and 1989. Now this was really, I was really kind of urged to do this because I watched, there's a video on YouTube, which I'll leave a link in the description, of Alex Cox and Nick Freeland-Jones, the producer, at the BFI. It's about a 59-minute interview, and they're talking about Moviedrome, which obviously got me into the mood for Moviedrome. I mean, I still have some of Alex Cox's introductions to films, which I had on VHS, recorded off the television, that I've burnt onto disc, because those of us that were into Moviedrome were fairly fanatical. It was something to look forward to. Obviously at that time we had video shops, but obviously Moviedrome showed some older titles that weren't available on physical media at that time. So I'm going to go through these lists of films and hopefully spread the nostalgia, but this was really just another excuse to talk about Alex Cox and Moviedrome. Whenever I see a Blu-ray that has an Alex Cox introduction or a commentary piece by Alex Cox, it just warms my cockles, and I do get emotional about it because it was such a huge influence, and these films were such a huge influence. But as both Alex Cox and Nick Freeland-Jones say in the interview, it was really just all these films the BBC had the rights to in their vaults, but they were just never put on television for fairly obvious reasons. So they just wanted a way to share these films. Some of the films Alex Cox liked more than others. Later on, from 1997 to 2000, Mark Cousins, the documentary filmmaker, he took over. And not bashing Mark Cousins, but I would be surprised if anybody preferred Mark Cousins to Alex Cox. But in Mark Cousins, there's one film particularly that he talked about how he didn't like it, but he was showing it anyway. So when you think of Moviedrome, you think of Alex Cox, even though, to be fair to Mark Cousins, he did it between 97 and 2000. And I still watched it, obviously, because it's Moviedrome. But then with the birth of more channels and streaming, there's kind of more choice but less choice as far as actual quality. And the fact that, as again they said in the BFI interview, they were pretty much left alone to put on whatever they wanted to put on. There was only one film they got into a little bit of trouble for putting on, but that was more of the timing of it. And I'll talk about that when we get to it. If you've never seen Moviedrome, you can go on YouTube and certainly watch that interview, but there's channels who have a lot of Alex Cox introductions, which are absolutely wonderful. I specifically remember quite a few of them, especially one about a Michael Mann classic. But we'll get started, and again, if you haven't seen Moviedrome, this is just going to be, here's a list of films that I have, and who doesn't like that? So the first, again, apologies if these are out of order as far as when they were transmitted or anything like that. This was an order I got off the internet, and the internet's never wrong. Now this I don't remember seeing on Moviedrome, but the first one was the classic The Wicker Man by Robert Hardy. Now I'm not a huge Wicker Man fan. It is very good, obviously, but I'm not like a Wicker Man fan, fanatical fan. Obviously there's probably about 3 different cuts of The Wicker Man by now, and obviously you can get it in 4K. I don't have it in 4K, and I probably won't get it in 4K. But it's again, this was 1988 when this was shown, so this was back when The Wicker Man had pretty much been forgotten about, and it wasn't the kind of cult hit that it is now. I mean, again, during that BFI interview, they talk about what is cult and what makes a cult, but whether it's just a film that hasn't been seen for a while. So Electra Gliding Blue was the second one. Again, I don't remember seeing that in Moviedrome, but maybe I did, because I think I actually have the introduction for that, so I'm a liar right off the bat. I just have that on disc, so I'm not going to pull out just disc onlys. But Electra Gliding Blue is wonderful, and Alex Cox said that was partly an inspiration for Highway Patrolman, one of the Alex Cox films I really need to check out. And then again we have Diva from 1981 with Jean-Genis Benoit, which I haven't seen. Bizarrely, I was browsing on the internet and Diva kind of popped up as if to taunt me because I hadn't seen it. And then next, the Australian classic Razorback, one of the best giant pig films. And again, I've got a feeling that the first time I saw it was on Moviedrome. And then John Millis's Big Wednesday. His follow-up, Small Thursday, didn't do as well. This is a wonderful film, certainly beloved by certain members of the Blue Tube community more than others. yeah, Jan Michael Vincent before he became an alcoholic, Gary Busey before he became Gary Busey. And then we have John Huston's Fat City. Again, another very good but not great John Huston film, which for me is the story of his career. There's nothing wrong with making a lot of very good films. And then a film that I only watched recently, sorry, I've missed one out. Last Picture Show, which I have on disc, Peter Bogdanovich's breakthrough, which did have a belated sequel, Texasville, is that called? And I definitely remember watching Last Picture Show on Moviedrome. And then Barbarella, a film that I don't have. I have seen it. Obviously Roger Vadim's worshipping of Jane Fonda from 1968. Hard to believe in 1968 Jane Fonda was in Barbarella when her dad was in Once Upon a Time in the West. Yeah, Barbarella, which you can now get on 4K. And then next up, a film that I've only recently watched, but it's absolutely wonderful. The Hired Hand, directed by Peter Fonda, with Peter Fonda and Warren Oates. It's an absolutely beautiful little film, highly recommended. But I can't actually remember whether I saw that on Moviedrome or not, because if I did, I've completely forgotten about it. So I've got a feeling I hadn't. And then a film that has become one of my all-time favourites, and I'm sure it's an all-time favourite with you at home. It's Nicholas Ray's Johnny Guitar. I mean, again, there's a period in your life when you've never seen Johnny Guitar, and then you have seen Johnny Guitar and your life is not the same. Joan Crawford and Mercedes McCambridge just being absolutely wonderful. Subtle performances all round. Next, the film that got them into a little bit of trouble. So it was the 25th anniversary of the JFK assassination. So the BBC had lots of documentaries about JFK and the new conspiracy theories and all of that. And then of course Moviedrome put on the Parallax View. I don't know whether this was the first time I saw Parallax or not. And afterwards, as Nick Freeland-Jones retells in the interview, a producer from Time Watch, or one of the serious documentary programmes, gave him a bollocking in the phone for putting on the Parallax View, which is quite funny. And he said that's pretty much the only time they had kind of negative feedback or any interference. They didn't vet the film beforehand, but afterwards it got shouted at for putting on the Parallax View on the 25th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination, which I think is quite funny. And then next, a Barbara Steele horror classic, but not that one. The Long Hair of Death, which I'm sure I didn't see. I'm sure I saw Black Sunday. I think Black Sunday's later on in Moviedrome, but I don't actually remember The Long Hair of Death at the time. And then the all-time classic, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You'll have to wait and see for more parts of this review of Moviedrome whether the 1978 version is on as well. This is a 1956 Don Siegel economic masterwork of 80 minutes. Absolutely brilliant. Kevin McCarthy's finest 80 minutes. And then from 1958, The Fly. Absolutely wonderful, still with a really creepy finale that's actually still will give somebody the willies if they're not careful. And then a film that I don't have and I haven't seen, which is ridiculous, it just got a recent kind of 4K. I do have two versions of the soundtrack, because Tom Waits did the soundtrack with Crystal Gale. That's Coppola's One from the Heart, with Frederick Forrest and Teddy Garr. Still haven't seen that one. And I certainly didn't watch it at the time on Moviedrome in 1988. And then Nicholas Roeg's Man Who Fell to Earth, which I have grown to like a lot more than I did at the time. Again, I can't remember whether I saw it on Moviedrome or not. And then a film that I had seen before Moviedrome and that I have seen after Moviedrome several times. The Good, the Bad and Ugly, of course. Yeah, there's not much to be said about this, apart from it's absolutely fantastic. And then finally, the last film in season 1 of Moviedrome was Marlon Brando's directed One-Eyed Jacks, which I haven't seen. I've still never seen One-Eyed Jacks, and I don't have it in the backlog or anything like that. So that was season 1 of Moviedrome with Alex Cox in 1988, which was pretty impressive. So I do have a chunk of those films. So we'll go to season 2. I'm going to do 2 seasons at a time on each episode. And season 2 began with one of my favourite films of all time that sadly I recently found out is going to get a remake. And I do remember watching this on Moviedrome for the first time. It's Roger Corman's classic, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes. Yes, they're remaking it, sadly. This is absolutely brilliant. Again, economic, it's only about 80 minutes again, but absolutely wonderful. About you should have limits. And again, the kind of final reveal is quite horrifying, even for the 60s. Next, a film that I did have in the collection, but I got rid of it because I realised it's not actually that good. And that's Jabberwocky. It's in the Criterion collection, but I don't actually have it anymore. Did I see that in Moviedrome? Possibly, I can't remember it. Next is a film from 1949 that I still haven't seen, which is kind of bizarre. It's DOA, or Dead on Arrival, which was remade later by Dennis Quaid. Not by Dennis Quaid, with Dennis Quaid. I haven't seen that either. It's bizarre with all the noir kind of box sets that I have and all the noir films that I have, that DOA doesn't seem to have a Blu-ray release. Maybe it does, but I just haven't picked it up. It's bizarre that I don't actually have DOA and I haven't seen it. Next, a film I definitely have seen, The Thing from Another World, and I do remember this from Moviedrome. Absolute classic. I think there was a remake, but I can't remember. Next, The Incredible Shrinking Man. I mean, these are all just stone cold classics. Jack Arnold is a really underrated director who did a lot of wonderful films. Next up, a film by Robert Aldridge, who, according to the BFI interview, I think was had the highest number of films that were shown in Moviedrome, which is fairly random. I do remember watching it, but I don't have it. I'm not actually sure it's available in physical media, but you can correct me in the comments. It's California Dolls from 1981. I think this was Aldridge's last film, with Peter Falk as a coach of female wrestlers. I do succinctly remember watching it, but as I said, I don't have it. And then next, I've only got it on disc, but it's George Lucas's THX 1138, the best film George Lucas ever directed. Moving on, we've got a Woody film, Stardust Memories. Again, I don't remember watching this on Moviedrome. I must have been in my bed. And then next, a film I definitely do remember watching in Moviedrome, or maybe I got it in VHS before Moviedrome. Night of the Comet, one of the wonderful 80s horror films that's not really that horrific, but it's a lot of fun. Again, this now has a 4K. And then another Aldridge film from 1971, which I haven't seen, or maybe I have, but I've just completely forgotten about it because 1989 was a long time ago. The Grissom Gang. And then a film that I've definitely seen, Ace in the Hole by Billy Wilder. Again, this is probably the first time I saw it was on Moviedrome, Can't remember exactly, but I'm guessing that was probably the first time I saw it. Absolute stone cold classic. Arguably my favourite Billy Wilder. And then a film that's just got a 4K from 101 Films that I haven't picked up yet. Trancers with Tim Thomerson, which I haven't seen for years. I'll probably pick up the 4K once it gets a bit cheaper, because it's probably a 3-star film, let's be honest. I don't actually remember that much about it, apart from its Tim Thomerson fun. And then Alphaville by Jean-Luc Godard. Definitely the first time I saw Alphaville. It's in the Godard box set. I do need to rewatch it because it's literally been decades since I saw Alphaville. One of the things that Alex Cox did talk about in the interview was the fact he kind of regrets that there weren't more foreign language films or non-English language films. But he said himself the BBC weren't too keen on having films with subtitles. So there are a peppering of films with subtitles in Moviedrome, but it's mainly English language. And as I said, that's one thing that Alex Cox does kind of regret. You know, for example, he is a big Italian cinema fan, and in the interview he does say Francesco Rossi might just be the greatest filmmaker of all time. So that goes to show you all the people who laughed at me for having Francesco Rossi as my second favourite Italian director. See, Alex Cox thinks he's good too. And embarrassingly, the next one is Two Lane Blacktop, which I don't actually remember seeing in Moviedrome, and this is in my backlog. I've been on a Monty Hellman Warren Oates kick, so I'm going to watch this today to get it off my backlog, because I don't actually remember seeing it on Moviedrome. It is terrible that I haven't actually seen Two Lane Blacktop. Or maybe I dreamt it. And then we have the Buddy Holly story with Gary Busey again. And I haven't seen the Buddy Holly story from 1978. Yeah, I definitely didn't see the Buddy Holly story. I don't know whether that's available in physical media or not. And then next up, a film that I did have just on Burn DVD. I really need to pick up the Criterion, but it's Bob Raffleson's 5 Easy Pieces, which is a perfect Moviedrome film from 1970, starring Jack Nicholson, of course. Because I used to love Jack Nicholson, and then I kind of went through a Jack Nicholson kind of lull, and then I do appreciate him again now. I'm still not going to get One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest because I don't think it's that good, but I need to pick up 5 Easy Pieces because it is a wonderful film, and I do remember definitely watching that on Moviedrome. And then a couple of classics to finish off 1989. Sweet Smell of Success. That probably was the first time I saw it. You never know, they might have accidentally put it on during the afternoon, like on a Sunday afternoon, which would be completely inappropriate because it is quite a dark film. But Sweet Smell of Success, one of the greatest scripts of all time. And then finishing off, they already showed Ace in the Hole, so you might as well show Sunset Boulevard again. It's got or coming up, it's got a 4K. It's got a big chunky special edition 4K, which I will not buy, honest. Yeah, Sunset Boulevard, absolute classic. And that's how season 2 of Moviedrome with Alex Cox on the BBC ended. So as you can tell, I mean, even being objective about it, not a bad list of films to put on BBC on a Sunday night. Again, those days are sadly gone. Again, because even at Christmas they used to put on like a Bergman season. That's when I first saw Ingmar Bergman, was like a Bergman season at Christmas on BBC Two. You know, they would put Japanese and French and Italian films on, but they just don't do that anymore. You know, interestingly, Nick Freeland-Jones pretty much left to be one of the first people into film 4. So that was kind of the evolution. Film 4 essentially became Moviedrome, but all during the day and night. Well, that's what it initially was supposed to be. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed some part of this video. It is just memory lane, but it's also, you know, a part of my film watching, and certainly some of my all-time favourites come from kind of films my dad introduced me to, but really Moviedrome was a huge part of that, and I'll always be indebted to Alex Cox for that. And again, the BBC just having this huge vault of films, having the rights to them, but would just never show them. And Moviedrome was just a portal into this world of, you know, interesting, fascinating films. Even if you didn't love the film, it was generally interesting and different. But as you can see with that list, a lot of those films have stayed with me into my old age, which is something to behold. So the next episode will be, strangely enough, 1990 and 1991. What years they were. So hopefully you'll join me for episode 2 when I go back down memory lane to 1990 and 91 to see what Alex Cox was serving us up on a Sunday night on BBC Two. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you remember watching any of these films on Moviedrome. Probably later than you should, when you should be in your bed, you're watching Alex Cox. And let me know your sweet, sweet memories. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, saying farewell